I want to provide a summary for those who are interested in the course. Just a quick overview of the framework we're going to be trying to work through. I have this in the complex version and a simplified version. But in short, this course is really trying to understand the root of why humans suffer. Why we suffer by doing things that seem like we're reluctant to do. Why we suffer by contributing towards the systems that seem to be the ones enslaving us. And why we suffer in a society that seems to be unsuitable for us. One in which we feel distress being in, and one in which we feel sort of unhealthy being in. I'm trying to understand all of that and why this cycle cannot break itself and why we're stuck in it. And what we can potentially do about it, which, spoiler alert, there isn't much. To understand this, we break this course down into two main sections. One is this section of the self, denial of death, and Buddhist philosophy with the self and suffering. The second is looking at society, anthropological view of how humans kind of work about, and a little bit of hunter-gatherers, understanding evolutionary mismatch, and understanding how we contribute to an external system. So this is an interesting course, I think, because it blends two areas of fields of areas that I don't know if have much overlap into understanding something at the core, I think, of human suffering. And I really think this course is an attempt of mine to try to understand the world around me and to point and make sense of why these people seem to just be doing things they don't want to be doing. So, quick overview. I'll try to keep this under 10 minutes. But first thing we start off with is the idea that we see the self. We're going to explain what does it mean, why does it mean to see the self, how can you even see the self. There are such potential people as those who don't perceive the self because they don't see essence. But for the majority of people, everyone perceives essence. And they see the self. And that makes it so that they kind of see that they are simultaneously a symbolic little god, as Ernest Becker would say, and where they can consciously imagine that they are a human being, that they live on this earth, and they can imagine themselves looking from the perspective and vantage point of the moon. So being a sort of creature that can understand themselves on a symbolic level, it is very hard to grapple with the idea that we are mortal and we will someday decay into the organic world and be forgotten of, made true of our useless and meaningless existence on the world. And so that makes us terrified. In an attempt to try to reconcile that terror, we will try to deny the fact that we will die by trying to convince ourselves we are more important than we are, which will cause us to have suffering, which I call delusional suffering. This comes in many forms, but also in the form of Buddhism, with idea of craving to things and wanting and desiring certain things. But then the intersection to society and sort of sociology, anthropology, comes in with this aspect of clinging. What are we clinging to? We are clinging to the culture that we are brought up in. The culture that we are brought up in is this individualistic culture where the self is internalized, where we believe we are a human being. And this culture that's individualized has an externalized system that is already evolutionarily mismatched. A system like kind of the one we're living in right now, or for that matter, any sort of externalized system is just one that's not there when the population is under 150 people. So whenever it goes above this so-called Dunbar number, we're bound to have an externalized system like government, laws, money. And these are things that kind of rule us and tell us how to behave. Externalized system in the sense that it's indifferent to our needs and it's only there to control us. So we make an externalized system, and this system is the very thing that tells us in this denial of death what we should cling on to. So if the system says money is important, we will learn by denying death to grab onto money and to crave money. But yeah, so we're craving the thing that the system is telling us to crave. But the horrible thing about this, and I think the pinnacle of this course, is that there seems to become a cyclical nature in this. We crave the very thing that is indifferent to what we want, and by doing that, we progress it forward. So we're progressing the thing that is indifferent to our needs, and we're craving for more and more of it, ending in this cycle of creating a system that is further and further away from what is best for us. And a little bit of evolutionary biology, but culture evolves faster than biology can. This is a claim that Yuval Noah Harari made in his book *Sapiens*. And as a product of that, we're very easily put into evolutionary mismatch when we live in a culture that is different to how we're supposed to biologically behave. And evolutionary mismatch causes what I call bodily suffering. Just like how you may put a whale in a fish tank and they'll soon die because they don't have enough area to move, humans somewhat are strained by the current modern lifestyle. And the more we try to progress society, the more the evolutionary mismatch may happen. So we have a cyclical nature in where we seem to be contributing to the very thing that will enslave and cause us dismay. And part of the horror behind all this is that we are unable to not want to do that. In some sense, we are unable to not want to hurt and damage ourselves. We can only sort of keep on stabbing ourselves, metaphorically, in the body, cutting ourselves and hurting ourselves all over, and we can't stop it. And that's the ultimate sad reality of it all. But I think it's ultimately true and something that is happening. And I think this is an important disclaimer, but this course may not be everyone because it does not present a solution. It's more of a diagnosis on a problem that seems to show no solution whatsoever. And so, in a sense, you'd be taking this course, and I don't know what you gain out of it necessarily. You may gain knowledge of how it works, but you can't do anything about it differently because you're bound to it. You're stuck into it. This cycle is inevitable. That's the course. I won't say much more, although there's a lot more to say, including this whole arguments about what is a self. Is it really a self? Arguments about how the self is a culturally defined thing and how that matters in terms of our denial of death. How the great filter theory may be involved in this whole framework. The agricultural revolution, other forms of suffering, and more about the death denial, and looking into exactly what then is the meaning of life, and what is important for human life. Because at the core, one of the questions that will come up is, why do we even care about all this stuff? Why do we care that the externalized indifferent system is not something we should value? If we are born to value the external system, why shouldn't we like it? And so there's a question of then what is the meaning of life? And so that's something we'll try to tackle. So lastly, I will try to explain this very simplified structure of this entire thing. This is the core, the crux of the matter here, right, in this simple kind of visual. But what is happening here is this first example is saying that we're in death denial. When we're denying death, we'll have to try to convince ourselves we're more important than we actually are. And so the most easy thing to do is to grab onto our cultural meaning-making system. So we grab onto sort of the meaning-making system, and then next thing is we cling and crave to it. So like an entrepreneur trying to build a company in this modern capitalistic industrial society, or a king trying to conquer the land, or I don't know, some other thing that's to do with craving something in the system, wanting a lot of money, wanting a lot of status. That's going to be the thing you're craving. This very craving contributes toward the indifferent system because you're following values of the indifferent system, which will only progress the system. So as we create more technology, we create more innovations, we're going to be progressing the society further. Just as the digital era in the last 20 years have made so much progress, we're progressing our society. And eventually, and which I'm very pessimistic about, this society is very indifferent to us and not going to be sympathetic to the human interest. And so it creates further evolutionary mismatch and bodily suffering. And eventually, perhaps, is the reason for the Great Filter, is the reason for our own demise and existential risk. So that's the course. It'll probably start very soon. This is a summary. I'm making this in the beginning. We can see how my thoughts will evolve maybe throughout the semester. It has already evolved a lot since the last time I taught this course. So I'll be curious to see what happens and what discussions we'll have. Thank you.